So, our why of the week is most babies spend 22,000 hours in diapers before potty training. Many disposable diapers contain plastics, fragrances, and harmful chemicals. In fact, there was a study where 40 different diaper brands were tested by a US Environmental Protection Agency certified lab. They found that 23% of total products tested have evidence of PFAs, which are forever chemicals. Tell us your why. Why did you start Kudos?
I love this question so much. So my entire career, my background, I'm a mechanical engineer by training. I started my career at Procter and Gamble. It was always my dream job to work at a large CPG company. As a kid, I always loved like going with my mom to CVS, to Target, and just like she would always give me a couple bucks and like let me roam the aisles while she was shopping to like go buy whatever I want. And I remember when I was younger, I always said like I want to eventually be able to design a product that you can like buy on the shelves of stores that like my grandmother would be able to understand and purchase. So I went to college. I studied mechanical engineering and manufacturing. I joined Procter and Gamble right out of college, and it was there that I saw, and I was a manufacturing engineer, and I saw firsthand just how much plastic we were putting into consumer absorbents. And by consumer absorbents, I mean diapers, sanitary pads, tampons, anything with an absorbing layer. And I don't think people realize this, but diapers are actually the third largest consumer item in landfill waste. I mean, if you think about it, babies from go from use about 6 to 7 thousand diapers before they're potty trained. And you guys know, like diapers take up a lot of space, right? So I think that was really like the aha moment for me that it was like, are you kidding me? Are we really putting this much plastic into landfills? And then I started doing more and more research. I was obviously in my early 20s. I'm now in my late 30s and I have one 3-year-old daughter and another one on the way. But I started doing a lot of research and I started realizing that in addition, obviously, everyone knows the harms of plastic in the environment, but plastic also contains harmful chemicals that can be absorbed into the skin and disrupt reproductive and endocrine systems. And so, what I wanted to do was, could we set out to build a better diaper that not only had cleaner ingredients, but also performed really well? Because I think 10 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago, even in the last 5+ years ago, I think people always felt they had to make this trade-off that, and I would love to know if you guys agree with this, where you kind of were like, okay, I'm willing to buy an eco-friendly product, but I understand that that might mean that I'm like taking a hit in quality. And I think that's changed. I think that has changed now, where now you can get eco-friendly products that really perform well. But I really think that shift has happened in the last 5 years. I remember like in the past when I've tried to buy cleaner, eco-friendly products for myself, I felt like I was making that trade-off. And when you're an adult, like you're willing to make those trade-offs for yourself. But when it comes to your child, there's no room for trade-offs. You need the cleanest ingredients and the best performing product. And even more so when it comes to diapers, you are a new exhausted parent, you're sleep deprived, you don't know what you're doing, like everything's confusing. The last thing you want is leaks, blowouts, having to change sheets 10 times a day, right? It's just you don't have room for that. So I think that was like the biggest thing. It was like, how do we go and make something that is safer for your baby's skin? And then I originally came at it from like an engineering and material science perspective because I said I didn't have kids then. I did have kids shortly after we launched the brand. And then I think the other thing is like in the whole process of like becoming a mom and through this journey, it like really reshaped how I think about things and like clean ingredients, and you just care so much more for your kids, like what is touching their body, what's going in their body, everything. And I think that's becoming more and more of a theme and a trend amongst all parents.
Yeah, 100%. I think that so many parents used to kind of just do whatever their friends did or whatever they grew up doing. And now all of us, like millennials, have our eyes like wide open. We're like, what are we supposed to be doing better? Like we want to do better for our kids. Um,
They deserve better. And the reality
yeah.
is, right, I think the other big thing is a lot of us millennials are having children later in life than our parents' generation. And I mean, my mom I'm sure like my mom had both her kids before 30, and I didn't even start having kids till my mid-30s, right? So I think, and a lot of us, myself included, have had like long paths. Like we ended up going through IVF and like a long fertility journey. And so I think like through that whole process, it just makes you even more conscious and aware of like ingredients and medications, and just like you want to do the best, especially when you've like had so many more hurdles to get pregnant, stay pregnant, deliver, right? There's just, I think there's, and I think a lot of us are fortunate because we're having children later in life. Yes, that often leads to a lot of fertility
You're a little,
challenges, but the I guess the pro is we have hopefully had a little bit more times to build up our career and have a little bit more disposable income to be able to afford better products for our children.
yeah, I was gonna say you're a little smarter, right? Like
Yeah.
our prefrontal cortex has developed.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So I want to get into the nitty-gritty, the juicy stuff, if
Let's do
you
it.
will. Okay, what is setting Kudos apart from like the quote unquote luxury, super clean diapers, things like Honest brand, a Coterie, for example? What is the difference? And are those even, better for you swaps when it comes to diapers?
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you asked that question. And so let's talk. Why don't we use those exact two brands that you're talking about, right? Honest and Coterie. And Honest was definitely the first brand that in 2012 really came out with this idea of something that's eco-friendly and clean. But what did it really mean? The reality is everything in the diaper, the top layer, the part that's touching your skin, the outer layer that you first feel when you pick up a diaper, it's still all plastic in both an Honest and a Coterie diaper. And I think people are always shocked to hear that because I think engineering is amazing and you can engineer plastic, polypropylene, and polyethylene materials to feel really, really soft, luxury soft, right? And so I think people assume when you feel something that soft, it must be cotton or it must be a natural material. But the reality is like some of the softest material out there is like engineered polypropylene, which is like amazing on the engineering front. So when these brands say they're eco-friendly, what do they mean? And I think they've done a great job taking a step in the right direction of it generally means there's no fragrances, there's no phthalates. They've taken out a lot of like the things that a Pampers or a Huggies have, but in terms of ingredients, it's still standard. You could pretty much the ingredients in terms of like the plastic materials are the same as like a standard Pampers or a Huggy. Um,
No.
and I think and they're they never claim that they're fully biodegradable or they're plastic free or but I just think that is the honest difference. No pun intended. It's the amount of plastic in the diaper. So if we look at both Honest and Coterie, like I said, both the layer touching your baby's skin, the outer layer, most of the other layers are all plastic. Um, when what makes us different is that we are the only disposable diaper on the market that is lined with 100% cotton. So with us, you have 100%
Wow.
cotton touching your baby's skin. And what's great about cotton, I mean, I don't think, I think this audience very much is probably very aligned with the idea of using cotton. It's naturally breathable. It's doctor recommended for rash and eczema. It's better for long-term skin health. It's the same reason, like, once kids starting wearing underwear, if you were to go to your pediatrician, they'd say, yeah, get like a cotton underwear, right? So,
Wow.
so why are we doing anything different in that infant stage when you're in diapers? Like, why are we not doing cotton there, right? Something like I think the stats are over 50% of babies like face diaper rash at some point in their diapering journey. And the reality is, I mean, diaper rash can be pinpointed to a number of different things, right? So it's hard to say what exactly can cause it. It can be friction, it can be moisture, it can be changes in diet, right? There's just so many things that affect diaper rash. But one thing for sure that we tend to see is that because it's cotton and it's more breathable than your standard polypropylene or polyethylene, we tend to get fewer complaints of diaper rash, and which has been like awesome. And we also find that because of the cotton and how absorbent it is, like we don't have to have a separate like daytime and nighttime diaper. We just have one diaper that works great overnight as well because cotton has such good absorbency as well.
I love that. I love that explanation too, because I think microplastics in general are such a huge topic right now that why not start with the diaper with plastics around your child? Something else that I wanted to follow up with because I know my audience and I know that
Yeah,
they're going to ask this. What about Millie Moon? What about Kirkland? Like those are going to be
yeah,
questions I know they're thinking.
totally, totally. And I think let's also start by saying like we everyone needs to do what's within their budget, right? Like that's the reality. Like unfortunately, I hope this changes over time. Brands that are more expensive, like we are definitely a premium brand. We're definitely not we're not the most expensive brand on the market, but we're definitely more expensive than your Kirkland and Millie Moon. And the reality is when you use natural materials, they just cost a lot more. So to give you
Yeah.
a sense, right? Like my cotton, which I source all in the US, from Mississippi, from local farmers in Mississippi, it's 6x the cost of polypropylene or plastic, right?
Wow.
So it's not like I'm charging more and my margin is like 6x what a Pampers or a Millie Moon is. No, like not at all. And so we try to keep our prices as low as possible, but I think the challenge is just the supply chain of these natural materials are just more expensive. And the other thing I want to say about this is I think it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem on like how do you bring these costs down? And I think the reality is like these supply chains for these natural materials just aren't as built out as like a plastic supply chain. And so like a company like Procter and Gamble who makes Pampers or Kimberly Clark who makes Huggies, like if they wanted to do a cotton line diaper tomorrow, which we have we have a lot of IP and patents around our stuff, but like I'm saying, like if they were to go down that path tomorrow, they would need I don't know, let's say like 1 billion pounds of cotton on day one, right? And like that supply chain just isn't there. But these suppliers haven't developed these supply chains because there's never been a buyer. So it's like a little bit of a chicken and egg problem. So it's really up to the smaller players like Kudos and others to help develop out these supply chains. And as these supply chains become developed and bigger, these costs will go down. And I think that's when you're going to be able to see like real mass adoption. And so with Kirkland and Millie Moon, I think like yes, unfortunately it's all plastic touching your baby's skin. The other thing is I'm not sure if you've heard of like TCF versus ECF, totally chlorine-free diapers versus elemental
Yes,
chlorine-free
I have heard of
diapers.
that.
That's the other big thing. So a
Mhm.
brand like Kudos, and there's very few brands out there that are totally chlorine free. And the reality is, so we use no chlorine or chlorine derivative compounds to bleach the fluff pulp versus something that's elemental chlorine free. They use chlorine dioxide, which is a chlorine derived compound as the bleaching agent for the pulp. So a brand like Kirkland or Millie Moon will have plastic top sheet, plastic outer cover, and their pulp will be elemental chlorine free. But like I said, I think there's every parent needs to do the best they can, and hopefully we get to the point where I think my vision is that when do you get mass adoption? It's really when these sustainable, really clean brands become cheaper than your plastic mainstream products. And that's when you're going to be able to see that mass change. It's like we should get to the point where the natural, really clean products are cheaper, that you're actually paying a premium if you're buying something that is plastic and does not have clean ingredients.
Totally. And how frustrating for parents, right? I know so many of my friends who use the Coterie diapers, and they're just like you said, they're a pretty penny. And I feel like Coterie, um, I mean, a lot of the diapers I feel like are greenwashed with labeling, right? But how frustrating for people who are thinking, like, I'm paying top dollar for
Yeah.
this premium diaper. And at the end of the day, they're just putting plastic on their baby's
On the
skin.
Yeah, I think unfortunately the baby diaper industry has a ton of greenwashing. I think that's a general problem in the baby industry, even more so in the diaper industry. I think it's a challenge. I definitely think it's a challenge, and it's really up to like brands like us to really educate consumers, go through the science, explain the differences, and like We're definitely not as expensive as Coterie. We never want to be. And I think it's like we want to be affordable but premium, right? That's kind of affordable luxury is what we really are trying to go after. That because we want to be available to as many parents as possible, right? Like clean products should not be out of everyone's reach. But like I said, there are challenges just in terms of how much a lot of these raw materials cost, which does not allow me to price my product at the same thing as a Kirkland or a Milliman.
Right. And let's talk about wipes because your wipes are EWG verified.
Mhm.
So many wipes also have fragrance plastics that are often undisclosed and linked to
Totally.
so many health issues. Like you said, rashes, they have
Yep.
hormone disruptors. If a parent, first of all, what sets your wipes apart? And second, if a parent is looking and they're like, oh, I'm using water wipes, these are just
Yep.
water. Like, what ingredients should parents be wary of with wipes?
It's a really, really good question. So the biggest thing for us, so like the standard wipe is really, it's usually like a polypropylene plastic is like the substrate or like the actual wipe material. And then you have a whole bunch of preservatives and chemicals and water that actually make it wet, right? That's how that's how you get the wipe. So the biggest things is, so what you want to look out for is like synthetic fragrances, fiber in the plastic and the fiber blend. So you really want to find something that is plastic free and is not polypropylene based, and harsh preservatives. Those are like the biggest things. And to your point, many wipes contain materials or additives that aren't fully disclosed. For us, we are completely made from plant-based fibers, cellulose, wood-based fibers. I realize when I say that it makes it seem like it must be like really hard. No, it's not. You're like, oh, it's wood-based fibers. No, it's a very soft material. It's very thick. We don't have plastic. We don't have fragrances. There's a bunch of preservatives that we don't put. And we are also EWG verified. And I also encourage consumers to look at EWG, the Environmental Working Group, because they have some of the highest standards to make sure that every ingredient meets the top tier of safety and transparency standards. So that's like another good starting point. To answer your question specifically about water wipes, because they are probably the most popular wipe on the market is my guess. So yes, that's actually a very challenging one because it's water plus grapefruit seed extract. So everyone just assumes it's super clean, but the reality is grapefruit extract, it actually, they've added something called benzalkonium chloride, which is a very strong preservative to give the grapefruit seed extract its antimicrobial properties. And grapefruit seed extract is known to, you see it all the time in cosmetic and personal care products as a preservative. But the challenge is it's known to be a severe skin, eye, and respiratory irritant. So that's why that's the challenge. I think it's branded as grapefruit seed extract, but there's more to it than that. So I think the marketing of water wipes is brilliant, as I think, because you just think water and wipes, and you're like, oh, it's just 99% water plus like a drop of grapefruit seed extract, but you got to dig into what does that grapefruit seed extract mean. And I think there's just, yeah, there's challenges.
Greenwashing again.
Yeah.
And so you sold 20 million diapers in the first 2 years of your business.
Mhm.
You launched Kudos shortly after giving birth. You appeared on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
You discussed, you touched briefly on your IVF journey.
Mhm.
What was that like launching a new business,
Yeah.
a new mom, right? Like, give some hope for all the working entrepreneur moms out there.
I think just like any working parent, I think it's crazy for everyone, right? There are too many things to balance, too many demands on your time. And I think the biggest thing is just like ruthlessly prioritizing how you're going to spend that time. Yeah, so we when it came to Shark Tank, that's exactly what happened. It was um I think it was I think I had applied maybe in the spring of 2022. And then they said you'll hear back like I think April or May of 2022. For whatever reason, I didn't hear back and it was totally fine. I was like, I mean, I never expected to go on Shark Tank. You like see it on TV, but you don't expect that's something that like you can do, or at least I didn't. Let me put it that way. I don't know if that was self-doubt or what it was, but it just seemed like, oh, that's like awesome for those people who do it, but that would like never happen to me. And I remember my daughter was born in June, on June 8th, and she was born at 5 a.m. And then a few hours later, I get the email that's like, we love this. Can you come film in 4 weeks? And I was like, oh my God, in any other world, I would like drop everything. I would like work my tail off nights and week. Like I would do whatever it takes to do that. But unfortunately, I had a really rough delivery. My uterus had unfortunately ruptured during delivery. So there was just like a lot of things that I ended up being in the hospital longer. Thankfully, me and my daughter were both okay and everything worked out beautifully afterwards. But it was like a very rough path to pregnancy and then delivery. We had just moved to LA from Boston. So there was just like a lot of change going on. And so I really thought about it and I was like, I really, really want to do it. But they filmed the entire season during the summer. And which makes a ton of sense. And I called the casting director and I was like, I really want to do this. I just can't do this in like 4 weeks. Like, is there any other filming date? And she was like super understanding. But she was like, I'm so sorry. I can't be like, hey, Mark Cuban, can you come back in October when Amrita's free? And it just doesn't work that way, right? So anyway, I ended up being like, you know what, I'm not gonna do it right now. Which was like probably one of the first like really hard decisions I made where you're like, I really need to prioritize my time and what I can and can't do. Like no other time in what other world would you turn down something like it just you wouldn't, right? And or at least I wouldn't. And I can't speak for everyone. But and then the producer was super understanding. And then she ended up calling me a few weeks later and was like, hey, you won't believe it. We're actually going to do a little bit more filming in September. Would you be able to do it then? And she was like, there's a guest shark. She was like, I can't tell you who it is. It ended up being Gwyneth Paltrow, who we did a deal with. But she was like, I think you like this would be a great fit. I think you should do it. And I was like, you know what? 12 weeks, we can make that happen. Like, give me like 4 weeks to like recover. My parents moved in to help. And my parents and my husband literally like took care of everything for those months when we were just preparing and designing the set and everything. And then went out, filmed it when I was 12 weeks postpartum. And it was honestly the coolest thing that ever happened. What you saw on TV is exactly what what happens. I think the only differences are that you end up the filming was probably, I don't know, maybe like 40 to 40, somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes. They obviously have a lot more questions and then they can't air all of them. So they do cut out some of the Q&A. But in terms of like, there's no starting and stopping. There's no repeating, like the camera just rolls, you film it. It is what it is. And we were super fortunate to get a deal with Gwyneth and Mark. And I think just for us, it really changed the course of the business because it's just when you're a consumer brand, how do you get that mass awareness, right? That's like the biggest challenge. And the episode aired in January of 2023. So 4 or 5 months after we filmed it. And it really changed the business in a very positive way because for us, we always knew once people tried the product, they really liked it. But it was like, how do you get them to try it, right? When you're a new brand, that's always the challenge.
Did you move to LA for Kudos?
Um, I guess it kind of worked out. Me and my husband, we were both in Boston, and yes, being in e-commerce, it always made sense to be in LA. So I moved. I wanted to move to LA for that, and then my husband, he's a chemical engineering professor, and he got a job at Caltech University, which is in Pasadena. So it kind of
Very
worked
cool.
out both of us career-wise, to be able to move to LA at the same time.
What was it
Amazing.
like working with Gwen? Because I feel like she's such a trailblazer in not only like the motherhood space, but the clean everything space.
Products.
Yeah, and I have to say she's like the nicest person ever, like nicest person
Love that.
ever. And yeah, like there's just been so many things that's really helped grow our business. And we're super thankful. I'm just thankful that we got a double deal with Mark and Gwyneth and and now we're in retail, we're in Target, we're in about 800 Target stores. Retail's been huge for us. I think every parent wants to buy their products. I mean, our consumers generally like to buy their products on Amazon or at Target. That's where our consumers shop, right? Like as a new mom, the last thing you can do is like go pack up the kid, go to the store. Like it's just hard, right? So you want everything delivered yesterday. So I think for us having that ability to be in retail, and that's also been huge for us for retail because now we on our website we only sell in 1 month supplies. But in retail at Target, we sell like a 10-day supply. So especially for those people that are like new to the brand or just want to try it out, it's a much easier lift in terms of giving something a shot at a cheaper price.
I love that. I want to talk about using bamboo in diapers, because I think a lot of people think, oh my gosh, bamboo, it's from the forest, like the rainforest. It's so clean and eco-friendly. Tell us why using bamboo diapers is not as green as it seems.
Yeah, it's a really it's a hot topic, right? So if you think about it, right, like here, I take my water bottle, right? Bamboo is like a very, very hard raw material. So if you think about it, to make it super soft and usable in a diaper form, that involves a ton of processing, right? So the bamboo must be broken down using harsh chemicals, specifically carbon disulfide, hydrogen sulfide, to become soft enough to use in diapers. And you use a ton of water as well. And so there's questions on like, is the amount of water usage worth it? And then you end up releasing a lot of these toxic substances into your waterways. So that's the challenge. So like these chemicals are linked to environmental and worker health concerns. The process is also very energy intensive. So yes, do you get that super soft feeling material? Absolutely, right? That end product, which is usually called bamboo viscose or bamboo rayon, is very, very soft. But there are questions of, is that processing eco-friendly? So yes, at the end of the day, the raw material is biodegradable, it's compostable, the end product is biodegradable, which is awesome. But it's not as simple as it seems because like now you're releasing all these chemicals into your waterways, you're using all this water and energy. So it's a trade-off. Like there are trade-offs with using plastic, there are trade-offs with using bamboo. So that's a little bit of the challenge. It's the processing.
And I love that you guys are manufactured, made in the USA. We had, do you know Active Skin Repair, that company?
Yes, I do.
Anyway, yeah, it's like they have sprays and whatever, but
Yes, yeah.
we had him on and he was saying how they are also like one of the only sprays that are made in the United States, and you just don't have the same quality control and oversee if, your diapers, your wipers are made overseas, they're made in China, like you really don't know what's hiding in your diapers and wipes.
Totally, totally. And that's been like a big push for us. Right before we launched in Target in August of 2024, we moved all of our manufacturing to the US, which has been amazing. We have a lot more control. We have a lot more ability to make changes. And now we're not shipping like our cotton, like all of our raw materials are near our manufacturing, which has also been huge for us. So we're super excited, especially in this with like the way tariffs are going and stuff. It helps shield us from some of that. I mean, you're still going to be hit by every brand is going to be hit by tariffs in some way because there are, no matter how hard you try, like, do we get some packaging material from Asia? Yes. But there is, but we are, because we manufacture most of our raw materials are in the US, that helps as well.
Right. And I mean, look, parents got peace of mind that what's actually touching their babies,
Yeah.
right? Like the things that matter. Um, some moms like if babies are getting little rashes on their hips, right? From like the diapers. I know you guys added more elastic
Yep,
or more stretch in your
totally.
diaper. What would that little rash be from?
Like I said, rash is such a hard thing to pinpoint, but it could be a number of different things. It could be sometimes it's just from like things that you ate, sometimes it's from excess moisture, sometimes it's not from not changing a diaper fast enough. Probably the most common thing we see is that you're in a diaper that's too tight for you, that you're not moving up in size as soon as possible. Um, Sometimes, yeah, it's just like the tightness around your skin, too much friction. So there's just, I would say friction, moisture, tightness, or something in your diet that you're not reacting well to as you're switching from just milk to solids or you're trying new foods. It could be any of those things. There's also pH imbalances that can happen once there's urine sitting in a diaper. So I would say any of those things. I wish there was like a clear answer of like, this is why you have diaper rash. But unfortunately there isn't.
And something I wanted to bring up too is dyes, because sometimes, I mean, when I was doing my research, it was like you wanted the diapers to be totally chlorine
Free, dye free.
Yep.
What else? I mean, what are the other things that Kudos avoids? Is there anything we didn't touch on? Is what kind
I
of
mean, you got it right. Fragrances, the big thing. So when you see
fragrance?
those things,
Yeah,
they're like totally chlorine free, dye free, fragrance free, phthalate free,
phthalate free.
which was
That's what I was
all
thinking.
really
Okay.
important. But the one that we don't talk about is the plastic, right? That's like in my
Yes.
it's like let's not have plastic touching your baby's skin, right? That is like in my mind, it's like if I'm not wearing plastic underwear, why is my baby sitting in plastic for 3 years, right? That is like the biggest thing. So I think people need to be really aware of like what is that top sheet material. The one thing you will also see in our diapers is that you will see some black specks in the top sheet, the part that's touching your baby's skin, and that's because it's unbleached natural cotton. So the cotton is mechanically cleaned, but we don't use like heat, pressure, chemicals, etc. or water to clean it. So that's why when you see natural specks, it actually is it's cleaner. It's not dirty. So want to call that out as well.
And
Do you
what
have,
about
oh, sorry, Britt.
no, no, you go.
I was just gonna say, do you have any information?
I don't, and maybe you don't either. Maybe there's not even research on this, but I'm thinking like we have been like producing things to make things easier for moms, but in the downside, it is, happening where it's like everything's high in plastic, there's dyes, there's chlorine, and we don't really even take a moment sometimes to look, are there long-term studies at all that show
Sure.
that there's like, girls are starting their period longer because they're sitting in plastic. Boys have fertility issues because, their privates are sitting in plastic. Like that's kind of where my mind went to.
You're 100% right. And there are longer term studies on like skin dermatitis and like endocrine and reproductive. Yes, there absolutely are. I apologize. I don't have the stats on the top of my head, but yes, there are a lot of scientific journals, scientific
Yeah.
papers on this stuff as well.
Yeah.
And my last question, I want to ask about the line down the diaper. What is like for does Kudos has a line?
We have it, and
Yeah.
I think that's that's like a like I think there's some things where you come down to are there brands that don't do it so that there's no dye for that as well? Yes. But I think that's a trade-off of like, are you willing to not have that line versus have that line? And I think parents, especially first-time parents, like you don't really understand in those first few months, like, is your diaper wet? Is it too heavy? So we made that trade-off to keep the line. The line is on the outer side, so it does not it's like as far away from the baby skin as possible. But yes, we do keep that line. That was like that was one of those things we went back and forth on a lot. I know there's other clean brands that don't do it. But we felt all the parents on our team felt very strongly that you want the line because you want to know, did your baby pee or poop? And so yes, like I said, I'll be honest, like we're not perfect. Like we don't we still have plastic tabs, they're still elastic. So we are by no means like 100% biodegradable, 100% plastic free, but I think we're transparent about that, and we want to take our customers along the journey of getting to that point where you can eventually, hopefully someday, have a fully plastic-free, biodegradable, home compostable diaper. And it's just a lot of the technology is just not there yet. And then sometimes you have to make trade-offs of, are you really willing to get rid of the wetness indicator? Some people are, but from our data and research, I would say it was like the vast majority were like, no, we want that line. So, and I don't know, how do you guys feel about that line?
My kids are I'm almost done with the diapering journey.
Congratulations.
Thanks. But I agree in those early, especially as a first time mom, right? In those early few months, I think the line helped so much. Maybe later down the road, maybe I don't need a line, but like those first 5 months of life when you're just trying to, make it
Survive, right? Yeah. And you
And
just
look,
want that yellow line to turn blue and make it easy to change. And I think that's the challenge, right? Like parents like tend to finalize, they'll buy a bunch of things like during when they're building their registry or in those first few months when they're on maternity or paternity leave. But then after that, once you're like back, once you're a little bit settled, you're back into your routine, most people are back at work. Then what happens is that you're not going to change your products unless something isn't working, right? You're really only doing that experimental phase in those first 3 months. So, and then what do you do? Then you're going to continue with that. And then when you have a second or a third kid, you're going to do the exact same thing unless something doesn't work, right? Especially
right.
with parenting things. If it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Like that's I mean, even like I'm thinking about it, we were just like this weekend getting a whole bunch of things before the second baby is due next week. And it was like we were like, oh, we're just like last time we didn't know which bottles worked, like we just had like so many things that we didn't know. This time we're like, oh, we're gonna buy this, we're gonna buy this, we're gonna buy this, and it's just like so much easier, right? So and
Yeah.
hopefully this one likes all the same things my first one did. If it doesn't, then we'll explore. But otherwise, I'm not gonna change things.
And thank you for coming on, you guys. She is 4 days away from baby number 2. So my mind is blown. Thank you so much for coming and opening. I know this interview will be so useful for so many parents, DM
Yeah,
us,
they're
like,
gonna love it.
what are good diapers, blah, blah, blah. So thank you so much. And to your point when you said you're not 100% perfect, we love that. It's like, you know what? We're doing the best we can. And you guys are as close to perfect as it gets. So we will take it and just
I do think we are further along on the materials front and R&D front than any other brand, even most of the other clean, eco-friendly ones. So we're very proud of that and we're transparent about that. And if anyone sees something that they have suggestions or questions, like obviously feel free to DM us or email and we'll absolutely try and help and answer your questions.
we appreciate it so much. Okay, where can people buy Kudos diapers? Give us your social handles, everything.
Yeah, you can buy it on our website at mykudos.com, mykudos.com, or at almost 800 Targets across the nation. So those are the 2 places you can buy them right now, and then we'll hopefully expand to more places in the next year.
Amazing.
And then our social is Kudos to Baby, KUDOSTO baby on all the platforms.
Thank you so much. This is such a fun interview.
Thank you guys.